Hello, Nitish. Can you hear me?
Yes, good morning, sir. I can hear you.
Nitish, how are you doing health wise? Are you fine?
Yes, sir, I'm fine, sir.
Have you got yourself vaccinated?
Not yet, sir. I have booked my slot. So it's for the next week.
Okay, Nitish, can you tell me the difference between this Covaxin and Covishield? And what will
Yes,
you prefer if given an opportunity?
yes, sir. So Covishield is developed by AstraZeneca and its
Hmm.
manufacturing is done in India by the Serum Institute of India. So
Hmm.
it's a foreign researched vaccine, but
Hmm.
developed in India. And whereas Covaxin is developed by ICMR
Hmm.
along with the partnership with Bharat Biotech, and it
Hmm.
is completely indigenous vaccine. And if given a choice, I think both vaccines are equally efficacious. So I would take any vaccine that is available nearby.
You have no preference, dear. If you
No,
are
sir.
asked to make one, then
So both vaccines are good, and I can take any vaccine. So there is no specific preference for one vaccine.
okay. You live in Karol Bagh, Delhi.
Yes, yes, sir.
It has some history associated with it. How this name come about? Karol Bagh. What is the history behind this?
Sorry, sir, I'm not aware about this about the name Karol Bagh.
Okay. Are you aware of a very important electronics market very near to Karol Bagh?
Yes, sir. It is the Ghaffar market.
It's named after whom?
Sir, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan.
Can you tell me something about Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan's values that inspire you?
Sir, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan. Sorry, sir. Sir, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan was a follower of Gandhiji, and
Hmm.
he followed the Gandhian principles of non-violence,
Hmm.
satyagraha, and ahimsa. So these values, I also respect these values, and I try to incorporate them in my life also. The satyagraha and non-violence.
Satyagraha and non-violence.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you aware of this Israel-Palestine conflict that is going on?
Yes, sir. I'm aware.
What do you think, Nitish? Justice is on whose side?
So there is no complete justice in this because each side has their own perspective. And
Hmm.
if we talk about the recent issue, it was started after clashes in the Al-Aqsa Mosque between
Hmm.
the Israeli security forces and the Palestinian people. So
Hmm.
after that, Hamas launched rocket attacks in the Israel cities. So Israel has to respond to that attacks. So there is no one justified truth about the incident, and no one party is completely right or completely wrong. Both have their fair share of rightness and wrongness in this issue.
Do you see any parallels between the Israel Palestine conflict and India Pakistan conflict? Is there any parallel?
Sir, if we talk about the origins of the four countries, then Israel, Palestine, and India, Pakistan, somewhere there is religion at the heart of the issue because India and Pakistan were also created on the basis of religious divide. And similarly, Israel and Palestine in the initial days were created because of a religious divide. And currently also, but there are some differences also. For example, Israel is a state, but Palestine is not yet a nation. It's not yet a state, whereas
Hmm.
India and Pakistan have both achieved the statehood and the nationhood. So
Hmm.
these are some similarities and differences.
How do you define nation? What is nation according to
Yes, so nation is a group of people which have a common history and a common future and a common vision for the future. This is
you?
a
Hmm.
nation.
Is this not a definition for a community?
Uh, so nation represent a community. Nation is the representation of the community at a wider level, wider scale.
Hmm.
So it nation is the wider scale, sir.
India is a nation of nations. Do you agree to this term?
Yes, sir. It has said that India is a nation of nations
Hmm.
because there are many communities, many different people living in the country, the Marathas, the Punjabis. But
Hmm.
yet, India as a nation is for Indians, and we are overcoming these identities, and we are moving towards a greater identity of Indianness. And it was also reflected in the speech of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in the Constituent Assembly, where he
Hmm.
said that India is a nation in making.
Now, you tell me that you come from Delhi. Recently, a piece of law has been enacted
Yes.
regarding the National Capital Territory. Are you aware of that? And what changes does that law makes?
So recently, a law has been passed called the Government of National Capital Territory of Delhi Bill 2021, which says that the government in Delhi would, from now onwards, would mean the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi and not the Council of Ministers led by the Chief Minister. Second provision is that all the executive actions of the government of Delhi would be taken under the name of the Lieutenant Governor. And the third provision is that all the norms and all the rules of the Delhi Legislative Assembly would be in accordance with the Lok Sabha. So these are the three changes that the bill has brought.
What are your views with respect to this bill? Do you support this bill or you reject it?
Sir, I support this bill as this bill clears the ambiguity between the role of the Chief Minister and the Lieutenant Governor, and it presents a clear path in which both these constitutional authorities can work in tandem for the betterment of Delhi. So,
Hitesh, do you agree that one of the major duties of a civil servant is to promote democratic aspirations of the people and address democratic grievances? Do you agree to this statement?
Yes, sir, I agree to this statement. As we see that civil servants are also involved in the process of conducting the elections at the district level because they are representative of the Election Commission of India at the district level. So they must ensure that people participate in the democratic processes like the elections, and people have their fair democratic aspirations towards their leaders and towards their administration.
So don't you think that this recent amendment that has been made to the National Capital Territory Act, it goes contrary to the democratic aspirations of the people of Delhi?
Sorry, sir, I have a different opinion because the people of Delhi Delhi still have the right to elect the Council of Ministers, to elect the Chief Minister. They still have the Legislative Assembly. But what has changed is that from now onwards, the government of Delhi would mean the Lieutenant Governor, and the Chief Minister would still be there, but he has to work in tandem, in coordination with the Lieutenant Governor. So this is the only change, and also the executive decision would be made by the Chief Minister and the Council of Ministers, but they must be approved by the Lieutenant Governor. So it will bring a more transparent procedure and transparent process, and it would help the people of Delhi, sir.
Okay. You have done your graduation in Commerce and Accountants in Economics, I feel. And,
Commerce, sir.
And your post-graduation is also in Commerce?
Yes, sir.
Then why on earth, Hitesh, you have chosen Political Science and International Relations as your optional subject? It is bewildering. Yes. Do you want to give a justification for that?
Yes, sir. So I had the option of choosing Commerce as my optional, but I wanted to explore a new subject. And I had a fascination for political science and international relations, especially the international relations part. So I chose PSIR as my optional. But I also like commerce and accountancy as well as PSIR.
Okay. Have you heard the name of John Rawls, a famous political thinker? John Rawls.
Yes.
What are the similarities in the philosophy that has been propounded by John Rawls and Swami Vivekananda?
Sir, John Rawls has given the theory of justice, in which he says that people must be given liberty as well as equality. It balances the liberty and the equality. And if we talk about the principles of Swami Vivekananda, then he also promotes that people must be given freedom, and people must be given equal opportunities so that they can excel. So these are some similarities between the two.
What is the Maximin principle?
Maximin principle is that a person behind the veil of ignorance would choose the option which is the most beneficial and the least worse of option. For example, the person would not choose complete liberty and would not choose complete equality. He will choose a balance of both.
Your hobby is extremely interesting. It says that you like listening to lectures on mythology, Indian mythology. You have made it very specific, Indian mythology. What is the difference between myth and reality? And what will you call Ramayana? A myth or reality?
So if we talk about the word myth, it has its origin in the Greek language. The word myth comes from the Greek word mythos, which means my story. It is a subjective truth, and a similar word in Sanskrit is mithya, which means my story or subjective truth. If we compare with truth or reality, then truth or reality means objective truth, which is universal for all. But in myth, it is a viewpoint of one particular person who has written the stories through his lens. For example, in Ramayana, we see that the story is written by Valmiki ji, as he was participant in the Ramayana also. So it was his story, it was his experience on the basis of which he wrote the Ramayana. Similarly, in Mahabharata, we see that Mahabharata, written by Ved Vyas, was his experience, what he saw on the battlefield. So, in my opinion, Ramayana and Mahabharata both are myths, which means they are subjective truth. They are experience of one particular person who wrote those books.
What are the 3 values that you can learn from Upanishads, which are quite relevant for a civil servant or a bureaucrat? 3 values, and name the Upanishads also.
Sorry, sir, I would not be able to name the Upanishads because I don't remember. But
okay, just name the values.
The first value would be empathy, because the Upanishads teach that we should have empathy towards other people, other fellow beings in the society. One is empathy, that would help in the civil services. Second is honesty. As a civil servant, it is our duty to be honest towards the citizen, towards the government, and towards the country. And the third would be the duty, your karma. You have to do your duty with full diligence and with full courage of conviction. So these are the 3 values, sir.
Satyameva Jayate is more related to honesty or integrity?
Sir, it's a mixture of both, because Satyameva Jayate says that truth always triumphs. So it promotes both honesty as well as integrity, because without integrity, you cannot have honesty for a long. You can have enshrined in your core values. So it promotes both integrity as well as honesty.
Hitesh, you have also been at some leadership position.
Yes, sir.
And you have been, if I'm not wrong, you have been some media in charge or media president at the Delhi University Students' Union. What steps did you take at that position to ensure that there is free and fair existence of the press? It means, in other words, what you did for freedom of speech.
So my role as the media president of Delhi University Students' Union was to maintain the PR wing of the DUSU. That is how the DUSU interacts with the Students' Union of the various colleges in the campus. And so my role was like a bridge which connects the DUSU as well as the Students' Union of my particular college, that was SRCC. So, for example, that DUSU launches some program, like in the Swachh Bharat campaign, there was a drive in which DUSU decided to paint all the walls of the campus because which were damaged in the electioneering process. So in that campaign, it was my role to have the PR marketing wing of the DUSU and encourage more students coming from all the colleges, and especially from my college, to participate in that process. So this was my role as the media president.
Tell me one step that you have taken as the media president to promote free and fair speech.
So one is that I have made the page of the DUSU on Facebook and Instagram more active, and through which more people can interact with the DUSU. And I have made a process in which that all the people who message the DUSU on the Facebook Messenger, so there's a quick reply from the DUSU administration within 24 to 48 hours, the student leaders. And I was also a member of the group which was responsible for replying those messages. So this was one step, sir.
Okay. Have you heard about this term, bubble, in the economic context?
Yes, sir.
How many bubbles, according to you, exist in the world today? And in which country? Name the major economies and their major bubbles.
So bubble in economics means a situation where the stock market or the economy is at a higher level, which is without a strong fundamentals. For example, we saw a bubble building in the before the 2008 global financial crisis. So if we talk about the current situation, then because of the pandemic, almost every economy is suffering, and there is a chance of a bubble being created because in most of the economies, the Reserve Bank and the government has introduced a program of expansionary monetary policy as well as expansionary fiscal policy, in which the interest rates have been reduced to a very low level in India also and in emerging as well as the developed economies. So there is a possibility of a bubble being built. Unless and until the taps are closed at the right point of time and the Reserve Bank and all the central banks increase the interest rates, there is a possibility of the bubble. But as of now, it would not be very easy, and it would not be good to draw a conclusion at this point of time that the bubble is being built in any economy as of now.
Okay. So according to you, there are no bubbles, potential bubbles at this moment, anywhere in any major economy. That's what you're trying to convey, Nitish?
No, sir. There could be potential bubbles, especially in the economies of the European Union, the PIGS economy, the Portuguese, Italy, Greece, and these economies. There's a potential of bubble because they have held on to a policy which says that there should be low interest rate, and possibly in US also because currently the government in the US has laid down a plan of over $2 trillion GDP, over $2 trillion of the GDP in the expansionary process. They are giving free money to the people. So there's a process of bubble being built in the US as well as Europe.
Rich, are you aware of a concept called secularism? I hope you are obviously aware of it.
Yes.
And you are also aware of the differences between the Indian type of secularism, Western type of secularism?
Yes.
Yes. Can I say that the communist idea of secularism is not in synchronization with the Indian idea of secularism? Do you agree to this statement?
Yes, sir, I agree. Because the communist idea of secularism says that there should be no religion of the state and no religion of the people. Marx has famously said that religion is the opium of masses. And so the communist countries like China or the former USSR form no religion of their own, and neither they promote the religious freedom of their people. Whereas if we talk about India, then the Indian model of secularism is more of acceptance and tolerance, in which though the state does not have any official religion, but it actively involves in protecting the religious freedom of its citizens. And we have provisions like Article 25, Article 26, which gives the citizens of the country freedom to practice their religion and form religious associations. And we see in India that state also contributes towards religious festivals like the Kumbh Mela, like providing the Hajj subsidies, which is now disbanded. But in India, the religious freedom is more than the communist countries. So Indian model of secularism is based on the Gandhian principles of acceptance and tolerance, whereas in communist model, it is based on Marx's principle of religion as the opium of masses.
Don't you think, Nitish, then we should get rid of this word secularism and insert the word pluralism in its place? That would be a better word which connotes whatever you have just said.
So secularism as a principle, as a ethos, was part of the Indian society before the emergence of the word secularism. And secularism, as we understand today, is largely a Western phenomenon. So I don't agree with changing the word secularism, but we can change the idea behind the word. We should not have the Western model of secularism. We should have the Indian model of secularism. And it can be incorporated within the word secularism, because we see that now the Western countries are moving towards the Indian model of secularism rather than the other way around. So I think the word secularism should be there.
So you are in favor of calling a car a boat?
No, sir. Secularism itself does not mean a Western secularism. Secularism is a neutral word. It should not be only seen from the prism of the Western countries. India has its own secularism. West has its own secularism.
Can you tell me something about the origins of this word? From where this word has originated?
So largely it was in France. It has its origin in the French Revolution, whereby there was.
About it?
No, sir, I'm not sure about it.
Have you heard about the Reformation movement?
No, sir.
Okay, Nitish. Sir, you can carry on from here.
Thank you, sir.
Nitish.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Tell me the meaning of your name, Nitish.
Yes, sir. So the word Nitish is associated with Lord Shiva also. So this is the meaning.
So your name's meaning is similar to Shiva, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Tell me what qualities of Shiva you like and you would
Yes.
like to incorporate in your life.
So one good quality that I try to incorporate is focus, because Lord Shiva is called as the Adi Yogi, and he's a person, he's a god, which relies on yoga and meditation and focus. So I try to bring that type of focus in my life also, to have a dedicated focus on certain particular things that I like to pursue in my life.
Okay. But if you are that dedicatedly focused, then you should have chosen or you should have gone with political science as your graduation subject. Why you went with commerce?
So choosing commerce was my conscious decision after class 10, because at that point of time, I thought that commerce is a better subject than humanities. And it was my personal opinion at that point of time. And after pursuing commerce in 11th and 12th, I had no option to take political science in graduation. So I took commerce as my graduation subject as well as my post-graduation subject.
Okay. Tell me meaning of strategic hedging.
Strategic hedging means speculating on the future prospects of a particular commodity. For example, oil prices. There is hedging in the oil market in which the buyers purchase the bond in advance, and on the basis of that, they influence the prices of oil. So this is hedging, sir.
I was asking you from the perspective of international relation. Strategic hedging from the perspective of international relation.
Okay. So can I explain it by an example?
Yes, sure.
Yes. For example, US has its strategic hedging on India to tackle the increasing Chinese influence in the Indo-Pacific region. So strategic hedging means having some sort of putting a bet on other countries to tackle some of your problems that are common to both of you, like the US-India cooperation in the Indo-Pacific region and the subsequent formation of the Quad grouping. So.
Okay. Do you think India is also pursuing some kind of strategic hedging by aligning with US?
Yes, sir, because the interest of the US and India in the 21st century are very interlinked, especially if we talk about the Indo-Pacific region, if we talk about the competition with China. So India is also strategically hedging, because earlier India has followed a policy of non-alignment and strategic autonomy, but now India is more towards strategic hedging with US.
So, do you prefer non-alignment or strategic hedging? Choose
So
anyone.
I prefer any policy which is relevant at that point of time to pursue our national interest. Ultimate goal of a country's foreign policy should be its national interest. And at this point of time, better than non-alignment is the policy of strategic hedging with US.
But don't you think too much national interest harms the larger good?
No, sir.
If all countries pursue their own national interest, then it would lead to mass exploitation. Everyone will try to establish hegemony over the other. So it will harm the larger good, right?
No, sir, I have a different opinion. I don't think so that national interest is antagonistic with the global peace. For example, it's because of India's national interest, India follows a policy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, in which it is the vaccine capital of the world, it is the pharmaceutical capital of the world. It engages with the world, and it is also a nationalist country. So I don't think that a national interest is antagonistic with global peace and global security.
Okay. Tell me, in the context of Israel-Palestine dispute, why
Yes.
Oslo Accord failed?
So, firstly, is that in the Oslo Accord, the Palestinians recognized the existence of the Israel, but after that, there was no concrete steps taken to formulate the state of Israel, because still we do not have the country of Israel. And after that, in the 2006, we saw that there was a division in the political process in Palestine also, and there was one Fatah party and the Hamas. So Hamas was more extremist, and the Fatah party was more involved in the political process. So because of that also, there was no one political solution to formulate the state of Israel, and both have different views towards how to process towards the forming of Palestine.
So Oslo Accord was failed because of extremism of Israel or extremism of Palestine?
Extremism of one particular group, that is the Hamas, not of any country.
Aren't you aware about killing of Israeli Prime Minister after 1994 Oslo Accord?
Yes, sir, I'm aware. Israeli Prime Minister was shot.
Okay. Okay. Let us move away with that. Tell me conservatism principle of accounting.
Conservatism principle of accounting says that we should not account for any anticipated profit, but we should always account for all the anticipated losses.
Okay.
It is
Have you
also called
heard
the
about-
prudence principle.
Have you heard about Peter Drucker?
No, sir. Sorry, sir.
Have you heard about his theory management by objectives?
Sorry, sir. I have not heard about it.
Okay. You have presented a paper on women empowerment, right? Or a
Yes, sir.
debate. You participated in that.
Yes, sir.
Tell me the true meaning of women empowerment, according to you.
Yes, sir. So, in my opinion, true women empowerment would be when the men and the women would be given equal opportunities, and women would be given autonomy of their body, of their value, and of their education. They must be given equal opportunity in education, politics, economics. So, at that point of time, we would have true women empowerment.
Okay. So have you done anything for women empowerment apart from debating?
Yes, sir. So, for example, I will have to give an example from my college life, and in that, I was the core member of the team in our college, which was responsible for deciding the candidates for the students' union members, candidates who would contest the elections. So, in that process, out of the 16 posts, I tried to have more number of women participants, and I incorporated around 12 women candidates in that process to contest the election for the students' union, and remaining were male members. So through that, I ensure that more women participate in the college election process.
Okay. You love cricket, right,
Yes, sir.
Nitish?
Yes, sir.
Have you heard about the current discourse going on between traditional willow bat and bamboo bat?
Yes, sir. I read the news yesterday about.
Okay. So
willow.
tell me the difference between willow bat and bamboo bat.
So the bamboo bat is a new technology which is being developed latest in England, and it is said that the bamboo bat is very light, and it is easy to develop, and it is cheaper than the traditional willow bat.
That's it?
Yes, sir. I've read that's it.
It is light or it is heavier?
So the bamboo bat is lighter, though I'm not sure, sir. I'll read about it.
Okay. Differentiate for me between history, fiction, and mythology.
So history is the recorded events that have happened in the near past, of which we have certain evidences through archaeology or through written evidence. And fiction is the imagination of mind. And through that imagination, we write certain stories. For example, the Panchatantra stories. And mythology is mythology is subjective truth. It is my story, or it is the experience of one particular person. And on the basis of that, he has written a particular story, symbol, or some stories. So this is the difference, sir.
Okay. Where do you draw the line? For example, some epics in India, as you talked about previously, Ramayana and Mahabharata, some epics are considered by some as a myth and by some as a history. What do you think? A myth or a history? Choose one.
So these are myth, which means it is subjective truth. There is no complete universal truth in those stories. There may be certain points where the narrator has tried to extrapolate the situation and extrapolate the certain situations there, but it is not completely false, because for example, in Mahabharata we have over 300 astronomical evidence of the positioning of the stars and of the positioning of the planets, and if we check them with today's technology of the astronomy, then we find that certainly these positions which are mentioned in Mahabharata were true, and they such events has happened in the past. So in my opinion, these are myth, which means they are subjective truth of one particular person.
Over to you, Rakesh sir.
Okay, good morning, Nitish. How are you?
Good morning, sir. I'm fine, sir. Good morning.
Good morning. Nitish, interesting DAF that you have. 6th July is your birthday, you said, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you have any girlfriends?
No, sir.
No. Good. Why did I ask that question?
I'm not sure, sir.
What is the important? What is the 6th of July? Your birthday celebrated as worldwide.
Sorry, sir. I'm not aware about that.
You heard of the 14th of February?
Yes, sir. I've heard. It is the Valentine's
What?
Day.
Something to do with that. That is International Kissing Day. Okay, that was just by the way. Okay, tell me, you've done your MCom and now you are interested in applying for the right services. What I would be interested in knowing is how do you think that this qualification of MCom can help you in the performance of your duties here?
Sir, during my education in commerce field, I've learned the various processes of accounting, of how to handle the various economic issues. And certainly, if we see in the administration, there is a requirement of understanding of various accounting processes. For example, in the administration today, we are incorporating the direct benefit transfers. So in that process, there is a requirement of people who can understand commerce. And we see that the government is moving towards more privatization. So it will require more people, more bureaucrats who have the knowledge of accountancy, commerce, economics. So in that process, my education in commerce will help in my service, in the civil services.
But Nitish, your first choice is IAS, second is IPS, and third is IFS. Your accountancy and finance services, revenue services, they are way below. So I'm a little surprised. Being a person from the big MCom commerce stream, should that not have been your first choice as such?
So all the services are good, and I did not have any particular preference for a service, but we have to put a number to the services. So I put IAS, IPS, and IFS. And if we talk about the IAS as a whole, then it also has many role in which my knowledge of accountancy, economics, and commerce can be utilized. My being an IAS officer, as well as in the IFS or the IPS. So because every field in the civil services is a multidisciplinary field, and it requires a knowledge of diverse fields. So it will help in that.
One of your hobbies is listening to lectures on Indian mythology.
Yes, sir.
Right now, which person's expose on the Indian mythology impresses you the most?
Sir, Dr. Vivek Debroy.
Okay, and why?
So the way he presents the ancient text and the way he presents the stories that are relevant for the times of today. For example, the story of how the Mahabharata was fought, how the knowledge that Sri Krishna gave to Arjun, and how that can be used in today's time. So the reinterpretation of the text and reinterpretation of these novels, reinterpretation of this historical text that is done by Dr. Vivek Debroy is very good for the present generation. So that is why I like it.
And which is the most interesting personality that you have found in this Indian mythology of all that you heard of?
Sir, Lord Sri Krishna. Because the way he transformed from a cowherd to a strategic person in the Mahabharata, giving the knowledge to Arjun, and how he transforms from in different cycles, different times in life, because life is not one still, and we have to transform continuously. And so he takes part in the battle. He takes part in the events in Gokul and in Mathura. So that personality is somewhat I admire.
Okay, but tell me, talking about when you talked about Lord Krishna, he gave his gyan to Arjun on the battlefield, right?
Yes, sir.
That is known as
Bhagavad Gita, sir.
Bhagavad Gita. Good. When this gyan was being given, do you have any idea as to how long this lasted? How many minutes or how many hours this sermon lasted?
Sir, I'm not sure about the timing, but the sermon contains 700 slokas in the Bhagavad Gita. and it is divided in 18 chapters. So this was the duration of the discourse.
Okay, and what is the relevance of the Bhagavad Gita in today's world?
Yes, sir. So Bhagavad Gita is based on three themes of Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. And if we see in the present times, then we require all the three aspects in our life. For example, the Karma Yoga, Bhagavad Gita teaches that we should do our duty without any expectation of the fruits, which is called Nishkam Yoga, which is very relevant in the present times because we see that there is increasing inequality, there is increasing greed, and there is violence increasing in the society as a whole. So if we do our duty with equanimity, that is without being concerned about good or bad, without being concerned about failure or loss or winning, then surely the society could be made a better place to live in.
Which is the shloka that symbolizes this part that you talked about?
It is Karmanya Vadi Karaste Ma Phaleshu Kadachana.
Good. You also have a hobby of reading books, you said, right?
Yes, sir.
Which is the last book that you've read, and what are the lessons that you learned from it?
So I read Indian Renaissance by Dr. Sanjeev Sanyal, and the lessons I learned is that how India can develop, how India was capable in the past, and how India is capable today to be the leading power in the world and to be a civilizational power which can show the light to other countries and how it can expand its footprint from Asia to other countries. And it is not only the military footprint, it is the civilizational footprint of the Indian values.
Okay, good. You are from Delhi, you said, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In Delhi, there's a lot of talk going on about the Central Vista plan. What is it? What is the whole plan?
So the Central Vista plan is the plan to redevelop the basically the Rashtrapati, sir, the Parliament building, all the North Block, South Block, the residence of the Vice President, and the residence of the Prime Minister. So it is the redevelopment of the Central Vista in Delhi, the Rajpath, from Rajpath to the Vice President House.
There is a lot of controversy going on about it, whether this was the right time to go in for it or not. So what is your take on that?
Yes, sir. So the controversy that is going on is that the country should not invest in the Central Vista at a point of time when we are facing a huge COVID surge. But in my opinion, the money that is invested in the Central Vista, that is rupees 20,000 crore. But on the other hand, we are also having sufficient amount of money to handle the COVID. And it is not that the Central Vista project is somehow taking the resources from the COVID effect of the country, because COVID effect is already a different thing, and the Central Vista is a different thing. So I think both can go hand by hand, and Central Vista project should continue.
Okay, you talked about COVID. Tell me, do you think that the COVID situation has been handled adequately as it should have been in India, at least?
So if we see the per million death rate, if we see the overall performance of India relative to the Western countries, then we can say that India has surely managed well its COVID situation. But we see that in the second wave, because of a certain mutation in the virus, the infection rates are increasing at a very viral speed. So, but still the country is facing well, and we have achieved a plateau, and now the cases are declining. And we have ramped up our oxygen facilities, our healthcare facilities. Earlier, before the COVID crisis, we did not produce any PPE or any ventilators in India. But after the COVID crisis, we are developing these capacities, and not only developing these capacities, but also we are exporting PPEs, ventilators, or vaccines. So certainly, I think that India has handled the COVID situation well.
But the problems that have come up, see, the lessons that were learned from the first wave have not been of much use in the second wave. Now, how well are we prepared in case, as we are hearing, that there is a third wave also likely to come? How well are we prepared for that?
So the Niti Aayog has recommended the government to prepare for the third wave, and the government is preparing adequately. As we can see that government has ramped up the vaccine production capability of both the Serum Institute of India and the Bharat Biotech. The government has also provided with more makeshift hospitals with the help of DRDO and the army, and it is building more jumbo facilities for tackling the third wave. And we see that it is following the COVID. The people are also following the COVID appropriate behavior very diligently. And surely, if we follow all these measures, then the third wave could be a third wave could be avoided.
Okay, so you have a feeling that we'll do well in handling the third wave.
Yes, sir, I have the feeling because we have the weapons to deal with the COVID. That is the vaccination. And if we ramp up the vaccination drive, then we can surely avoid the third wave.
Okay, you are also your one of your subjects was political science in your written, right? Okay, tell me.
Yes, sir.
When we talk in terms of so many different, when we have things like platforms like BRICS, SCO, RIC, NAM, what is the relevance of all these organizations that we have, and especially focusing on NAM? What is the relevance of NAM in today's time?
Yes. So NAM as an organization was created in the Cold War times to present an alternative to the Soviet bloc as well as to the NATO. So at that point of time, there were many emerging developing countries which were coming out of colonialism, and so they needed an independent platform, and NAM provided that platform. So it was relevant for a period of time. But if we talk about today, then there is no superpower rivalry. There is only one dominant power, that is the USA, and surely we cannot have independent non-alignment from USA. So we have to have certain sort of interaction, certain sort of cooperation. So in that line, we have formulated other groupings like the Quad, like the BRICS. So in my opinion, NAM today must focus on how to improve the situation in the developing countries. And one point of cooperation in the NAM could be how the countries of NAM, which have the capability to develop the vaccines, will provide the vaccines to the other countries of the NAM. For example, we have 77 countries in the NAM, most of them from Africa, Latin America, and Asia, which still do not have an adequate number of vaccines. So vaccine is one point where the NAM can interact. So I think NAM still has some limited relevance in today's point of time.
Yeah, but don't you think that NAM has lost its relevance today because it was supposed to be a non-aligned movement, but now the countries are aligning into smaller groups of their own. As I said, you have BRICS, then you have Quad countries coming in, then you have the SCO, things like that. So don't you think the very relevance of NAM has been lost now?
So non-alignment as a foreign policy tool has outlived its utility, but non-aligned movement as an organization still has certain relevance for developing countries. And I also believe that the countries must move over NAM and must see some new mechanisms to interact with them. And BRICS is one such platform in which the emerging countries of all the major continents interact. So I think NAM must be there as an organization, but non-alignment as a foreign policy tool is not for the 21st century.
Okay, tell me something about the Quad countries and what is the purpose of this organization?
So the Quad countries include India, Australia, US, and Japan. And the purpose of the Quad is to maintain free, open, inclusive Indo-Pacific region. And recently there was a Quad summit of the leaders in which they have decided to create 3 working groups. The one is for vaccine, the other is for climate change, and the third is for critical technologies. So the objective of Quad is to maintain a rule-based international order in the Indo-Pacific and to have a free, open, inclusive Indo-Pacific region. And we see that through the mechanisms of the vaccine initiative of the Quad, it aims to provide around 1 billion vaccines to the Indo-Pacific countries. So this is a developmental platform in which the 4 countries have come together.
Nitish, you have debated in your school or college. Can you tell me the first rule of debate? What is the first rule of debate?
Always listen to your opponent very carefully.
That's the first rule of debate?
I believe it is the first rule. I incorporate it as the first rule.
Okay. Do you like challenges, Nitish?
Yes, sir.
As a civil servant, if you get into the services, every day will be a challenge. You're
Yes,
aware
sir.
of that?
Yes, sir, I'm aware of that.
But your DAF speaks contrary to that. Because I'll just bring one point in note that when you were filling your cadre preferences, you have filled zone 4 as which is the northeastern zone, as your last choice. And in that too, what is more astonishing, that you have given Nagaland the last preference, last of the last. When you see in terms of challenges, demographic, political, social, economic, Nagaland is perhaps the most challenging area of the entire country. And when you said you like challenges, I think there is a kind of contradiction. Do you want to defend you on that?
Yes, sir. So in the Cadre preferences, we have to choose, we have to give a ranking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And because of that, I had to give one particular state 1 and other ranking 5. So there is no one conscious decision to put Nagaland at the last or put Delhi at the first. Because I was asked to give some rankings, so I put Delhi first and Nagaland last. And also because I have the cultural familiarities with the Delhi and other regions, and not so with Nagaland. But this is not the point. But I would be very happy to work in any part of the country if I be selected in services.
You hold no biasness against the Northeast?
No, sir, no biases, because Northeast is also an essential part of India, and they are also our brothers and sisters.
Are you, Nitish, a patriarch? Are you a patriarch?
No, sir, I would not like to classify as a patriarch or matriarch. I don't think so that I'm a patriarch.
Do you suffer from any degree of patriarchy? That's my question, to be more specific.
Sir, if I talk about myself, then I try to not enforce patriarchy on other people. And if in the friend circle, and if the people who I interact, I try to not have patriarchal mindset with me, and I give equal opportunities to male as well as female members. Especially when I was the additional secretary of my college, I gave equal representation to the women students as well as the male students in the functioning of the union. And in fact, the more participation, more encouragement was given to the women students than the male students. So I'm not a patriarchal mindset.
Okay, but again, your DAF speaks to the contrary, and let me bring it out. There is an option given in your detailed application form with respect to income.
Yes, sir.
You show that your mother works as a housewife, and hence the income is 0.
Yes, sir.
Do you think, Nitish, that it's a manifestation of an ingrained subconscious patriarchal mindset which you have just reflected?
So the economic model that we follow, in that caregiving is not considered as an economic activity, which is accounted in GDP. So on that lines, I could not have put any number in that place. So that is why I wrote 0. But yes, I consider the caregiving activities of the mothers, the sisters in the house is really invaluable, and we cannot quantify them in one particular amount. So that is.
Inability to quantify something doesn't mean there should be no attempt to value the service.
Yes, sir.
If given opportunity, Nitish, would you want to change this entry?
So value always need not be monetary value. We can show love, affection towards our mother, towards our sisters, and it does not. They also don't need any money from us. They also need our affection. They also need our love. They also need our care in times of their health problems. So that is the case, sir. And the economics model is there, in which we cannot quantify the amount of the caregiving work of the women. Surely in future there could be any economic model which quantifies them, but as of now it is the situation where we cannot quantify them.
Okay, can you tell me one major economist who has backed this, that social care should also become a major sector of the economy?
So Dr. Abhijit Banerjee, through his randomized control trials, has shown how the participation of women, how the participation of children, and the processes like vaccination could help in the economic development of the society.
Any economists from the classical period?
Sorry, sir, I'm not exactly aware about their works, but I think Adam Smith and John Maynard Keynes, though I'm not sure, sir.
Okay. Nitish, you have played cricket intra-college or intra-school. Have you played intra-school as well?
No, sir, intra-college.
Intra-college cricket. Are you aware of test matches?
Yes, sir, I'm aware.
When the game started,
Yes,
what
sir.
was the length of the test matches or the duration of the test matches? Today it is a 5-day game.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So
Go on.
when the game was started, there was no fixed duration of a test match, so it could continue for an indefinite period of time until both the teams got all out.
Okay. Can you tell me which is the oldest county?
No, sir, I'm not aware about it.
You're not aware of it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm giving you a particular situation,
Yes, sir.
and you tell me that what will be the outcome of that.
Okay, sir.
Suppose it's a no ball. The bowler has overstepped
Yes, sir.
and the batsman has hit the ball,
Yes, sir.
and a fielder has caught the ball.
Yes, sir.
Accidentally, the fielder's foot is on the rope.
Yes, sir.
But before the umpire could make his decision, he saw that before the delivery was being bowled or was about to be bowled, or during the delivery, the adequate number of fielders who should be there within the 30-yard circle were actually not present.
Yes, sir.
But umpire has ignored that fact.
Yes, sir.
What will be his decision now?
So if there are not adequate number of fielders in the 30-yard circle, then also it's a no ball. And if the bowler has overstepped the line, then also it's a no ball. And in that situation, the batting team would be given 7 runs, 1 for the 6 and 1 for the no ball, because the fielder has
Which no
touched
ball
the
will be
boundary rope.
counted?
Sir, if the umpire has ignored the fielder point, then the no ball for overstepping would be given.
Okay. Is there no change with respect to the ICC rules recently?
So earlier there was that if the adequate number of fielders are not in the 30-yard circle, then it was declared a dead ball. But later it was changed to the no ball. And latest I'm not aware about, sir.
Okay. Are you aware about the infamous underarm incident?
Yes, sir. Though I'm not sure, sir. So
Delivery was bowled underarm.
Yes.
It was a match between Australia and New Zealand. Are you aware of that incident?
No, sir. I have read about that incident, but not about the match.
Okay. No, you know the incident, that what is
Yes.
an underarm delivery.
Yes, yes, sir.
At that time, it was legal.
Yes, sir.
On that day, which ethical value was compromised, according to you, when the underarm delivery was bowled?
So cricket is a gentleman's game, and bowling underarm, generally bowlers bowl overarm, but bowling underarm, though it was within the rules, but it compromised with the true values, true ethics of the cricket, because it ensures that both the batsman as well as the bowler are both predictable, and they will follow one particular set of guidelines. And certainly, if we change to underarm bowling, then it hurts the true spirit of cricket.
So, which two values got compromised?
One could be integrity, and the other is I'm not able to recall, sir.
Integrity and sportsmanship, are they the same?
Sportsmanship is integrity in the field in the arena of sports. So integrity is a wider value, and sportsmanship is limited to the sports.
Nitish, what is credit default swap?
Sorry, sir, I'm not exactly aware about the credit default swap, but I think the
what about
default...
currency swaps?
Yes, sir.
What are currency swaps?
Currency swap is an agreement between two countries or two central banks in which one country says that it will give a foreign currency to the other bank, and after a particular period of time, the foreign bank will return that amount of currency to the domestic bank of the particular country. This is the currency swap in international terms. There is also currency swap within the country. For example, Reserve Bank of India gives an option for currency swap with the domestic banks.
foreign exchange reserves can grow in how
Yes, sir.
many ways?
So one is by increasing the FDI and the FPIs. Second is by increasing the remittances. And the third is by increasing the debt level of the government in foreign currency. And fourth is by revaluation of the currency, revaluation of the assets. And the fifth is by revaluation of the gold assets. So these are the 5 measures.
Tell me one thing, Nitish, that you hate to the core, that you cannot tolerate at any cost. One thing.
So dishonesty and corruption.
Dishonesty and corruption.
Yes, sir.
What is the major reason for corruption?
So one of the major reason is that there's no adequate checks. And as was mentioned by Shri N.K. Singh ji, he mentioned that the honest officers are not rewarded adequately and the corrupt officers are not punished adequately. So this is why corruption thrives especially in the administration.
That is the major reason for corruption. Or it
So
has
one
to do
is,
something with moral makeup of the person.
so it definitely depends on person to person, because some person are corrupt, some person are not corrupt. And certainly the moral fiber, the integrity, the values like integrity, honesty of that person is also reflected when he's involved in corruption. And the person who gives a bribe is also similarly responsible for corruption, because his moral makeup is also not very strong, because he cannot stand up to his courage of conviction of not giving the bribe. So both the parties are equally involved, and both the parties have somewhat default in their value system.
What is your biggest weakness, Nitish?
So I'm an excessive risk taker. So I take risk very frequently. For example, during the college life, I chose to have participate in the students' union while I was preparing for the UPSC and while I was preparing for my MCOM admissions also. So this is one example, sir.
That's an academic risk that you have taken. Have you taken any social risk?
So during the 2019, we were organizing Crossroads, that is the largest undergraduate fest in the college, and which involved participation of very famous personalities. And during that time, we had the Pulwama attack. So there was cancellation of some speakers like Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji and Nitin Gadkari, who was supposed to participate. So there was risk, and I had to call that we should call off that event, or should we continue with that event without those speakers. So I took a risk. It was a monetary as well as a social risk, because there was a lot of sponsorship involved in that fest. So I took a risk and we continued with the fest, and by God's grace, it went smoothly, sir.
Nitish, tell me about leadership. How do you define leadership, and what qualities which a leader requires you have in you?
So leadership is a quality to take your team along and to work towards a common goal and achieve that goal. And about the qualities that a good leader must possess, the first is that once you have power, once you have a leadership qualities, you must encourage more leaders. You have to develop more leadership qualities in your team. Second is to be a good listener, because a leader must not take decision by himself. He should have consultation with his team, and he should take their opinion, and the final call should be of a leader, but it should be based on the opinion of all his team members. Third is to always have an encouraging team, to always encourage your team, to always take your team along with you. And the fourth one is to foresee, to have a foresight and to anticipate what could happen in future and to plan accordingly.
Okay. So what qualities do you possess among this?
Sir, yes, sir. So I try to possess all these qualities. One of the biggest quality that I have is I am a team worker, and I always take the team along with me, and I motivate them, and I build new and emerging leaders out of that team. For example, in the college days, I was part of the students union in the second year as well as the third year, and in the second year, I was able to cultivate new leaders who took the responsibility in the third year. So they were the emerging leaders under me. So this is one example, sir.
Some people believe that team working, or if we draw parallel in polity, democracy, in such circumstances, the progress becomes slow. Do you believe that argument? That in India's case, let us say, if we consider economic development of India, 70 or more than that years have passed since our independence. but we are still slow in our economic progress. And some people feel that democracy is responsible for it. What do you feel about it?
So in a democracy, decisions might be slow, but they are the best decisions. If we compare it with China, then though they don't have democracy and they have quick decision making, but the quality of living of the people is not very high. And people have money, but they don't have the freedom of speech expression and freedom to express themselves. So in a democracy, though decision making takes time, but it is ultimately in the interest of all the people of the society, and it ultimately benefits at the grassroots level of all the people.
Does India has free speech?
Yes, sir. Article 19 of our constitution provides free speech.
I'm not talking about constitution. I'm talking about the ground realities. Do you feel that on ground free speech exists?
So yes, I believe there is free speech in the ground also, because we see proliferation of many media houses, we see proliferation of independent student leaders, and in the university space also, there are different parties, different political voices there.
Okay, let's talk about media.
Yes, sir.
Tell me 4 problems which current media faces, or which you want to rectify.
Yes, sir. So the first is the sensationalism of media, because we see that now the media is showing more sensational news. Second is the model of the financing of the media, because we see that most of the media houses are financed by big corporates or big business houses. So there is a conflict of interest in the running of the media houses, because they don't show any news that is opposite to their media houses, to their business houses. The third is the TRP model of the media, and it is one of the reasons why media is showing some particular news and it is not showing the true news from the grassroots. So these are the 3 problems, sir.
I asked you 4 problems.
So the fourth
Nevertheless,
could be,
leave it. Nitish, you said that in India free speech exists, and
yes,
that is you gave an example of proliferation of media.
yes, sir.
You just talked about the problems with current media,
Yes, sir.
sensationalism and TRP chasing and all that. So you are contradicting your own view or your own statements. First, you said that free speech exists because of media, and now you are saying that media has such kind of problems.
Yes, sir.
So when I asked you about ground realities of free speech, whether it exists or not, you categorically said that it does exist.
Yes, sir.
Would you like to change that statement?
No, sir. The free speech exists, and we can see that there are more independent platforms coming up on social media, and we have various platforms coming up on social media which are rivaling the traditional media houses. So the problem that I have enlisted majorly belong to the traditional media houses that we see on the television. But about the free speech proliferation, then it can be viewed in the social media field, in the independent newspapers.
What is voluntary and involuntary corruption?
Voluntary corruption is
And
that
do you think that both are same, or both should be given similar punishment?
all type of corruption is ultimately corruption, and we cannot distinguish between corruption. One is good or one is bad, one is voluntary or one is involuntary. So in my opinion, all the corruptions must be given same punishment. And if we distinguish between voluntary, then voluntary corruption means willingly engaging to corrupt. Matlab, civil servant is willingly asking for bribe. But involuntary corruption is that the system as a whole, the system is such that honest person is not able to work in that system, and he ultimately crumbles down and he accepts corruption. So this is the difference, sir.
Imagine a citizen in your office, he is asking for some services, but your subordinate, he is demanding bribe.
Yes.
Citizen prima facie is not willing to give bribe.
Yes, sir.
But he wants to avail that service, and he is in desperate need of that, and he engages in corruption because your subordinate is demanding the bribe.
Yes, sir.
So would you consider your subordinate and that citizen as on same pedestal as far as crime is concerned, crime of corruption?
No, sir. My subordinate is more responsible for that crime, and the citizen is not willing. So he must not give the money. He must not give the bribe. And as a superior, as a leader, it is my responsibility to check that the subordinate does not indulge in any corrupt activities like this.
If that subordinate is your friend, what
Yes.
will be your course of action?
So it does not matter if he's my friend or he's my relative. If anyone, be it my subordinate, if anyone of my subordinate is involved in corruption, then I will have the same response. I would stop him, and if he does not stop, then further action could be taken against him.
Okay, so you'll give him chance to stop.
No, sir. If he has conducted any corruption in the past, then that action must be taken on the basis of that. But it is his first time, and he has not yet done the corruption. Then he must be given a warning, and in the future we can have some strict action if he continues with that policy.
Okay, one last question, Nitish.
Yes, sir.
As I can see your DAF, you have quite a wide gamut of experiences, starting from presenting papers on women empowerment or debating on women empowerment. You played cricket as well. You were media president as well. Just, I'm curious, why then you want to join civil services? Because you could have achieved more, or you could have helped the nation by providing services in various other fields, such as you could have been a businessman, you could have been owner of a startup, you could have participated in some NGOs for some groundwork. Why you want to join civil services?
So it has been my passion from the very beginning to contribute towards the society, and civil services provides an opportunity and the diversity through which I can fulfill my aspirations to contribute towards the society. And the nature of activities that a civil servant is involved, it is very large, and certainly I could have chosen the path of NGO or business to help the country. But I think that it is in my best interest, and it is to fulfill my passions to contribute towards the society, that civil service provides the best opportunity that I can think of now.
Okay, Nitish.
Yes.
You had said that you presented a case study on women empowerment at Niti Aayog International Conference, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What were the main highlights or the main features of this paper that you had submitted? And what issues did you bring out in this?
Yes, sir. So the paper was about the participation of women in the political field. So we see that participation of women is very low, especially if we talk about the parliament and the assembly level. It is less than 15%. But after the 73rd and the 74th Amendment Act, the participation of women at the grassroots, at the Panchayati Raj level, has improved, and it is almost crossing the 45% mark. So this was the topic of presentation, and I showed through examples of panchayat leaders like Bhakti Sharma that how being a women panchayat, women sarpanch has helped the village to have basic amenities like water, school, and good roads. So this was the theme of the presentation, sir.
Okay, but you heard about the POCSO Act?
Yes, sir. I heard.
What is it about?
So it is about protection of children from Sexual Offences Act, and it was brought to give severe punishment to any crime against women, to any crime against children below the age of 18.
Any drawbacks in this particular act, or is there any misuse of this act in the general parlance?
So earlier there was one provision in which the POSCO Act was only involved in case of crime against women minors, but recently it was made gender neutral, and male and female were involved in the POSCO Act, crime against both male and female. And so if we talk about any shortcomings, then the cases are registered under POSCO, but the case in the judiciary is taking very long time. So POSCO has a provision of fast track courts, but those courts are also not able to give the judgment in a quick succession of time. So we need to fast track that mechanism, and we need to have a quicker justice delivery mechanism to solve the crimes under the POSCO Act.
Okay, good. Nitish, you must have definitely heard about the Palestine-Israel problem that has just erupted, right?
Yes,
and Israel played a very major role in negating the missile attack with its Iron Dome systems that they have.
yes, sir.
Now, do you think India has an Iron Dome, and if it has, where has it been deployed?
So Iron Dome is an air defense system which tackles any incoming foreign missiles, foreign rockets, or any unidentified object in the air. If we talk about India, then India also has its air defense system. We have the Akash, the Agni missiles, the Prithvi missile, and also India has recently done a agreement with Russia to purchase the S-400 missile defense system. It is also an air defense system. So India does not have an Iron Dome, but it has its own technology for air defense.
Good. Okay. You've heard about the Project 75 in terms of the Indian defense.
Yes, sir.
What is it, and which arm of the services is it related to?
So Project 75I is related to the building of naval submarines. It is related to the Indian Navy, construction of new submarines.
And is it nuclear submarines, or are they conventional submarines?
So I'm not sure, but I think they are both the submarines, nuclear as well as the conventional. And nuclear submarine has been recently launched, the INS Arihant.
Project 75 is only about the conventional part submarines. Okay.
Sorry,
nevertheless, these days we hear a lot about Atmanirbhar Bharat.
Yes, sir.
Right? Make in India.
Yes, sir.
Now tell me, in terms of defense, where do you see this playing a role?
So the concept of self-reliance is very important in the defense sector. Recently, we have seen the government procuring the Tejas fighter jets from HAL. Also, we see that there is an upcoming defense corridor in Tamil Nadu and Uttar Pradesh. And in the Atmanirbhar Bharat package, government has said that any deal, there would be a negative list of equipments which could not be exported. There has to be domestic manufacture of those equipments, of those defense equipments, and there has to be domestic procurement of those equipments. So these are the three areas in which we see Atmanirbhar Bharat in defense.
India actually has been a very heavy importer of arms and equipment, right?
Yes.
Do you see this particular role, Atmanirbhar Bharat, playing a role of India becoming an exporter of, arms exporter?
So, as per the SIPRI report, it is said that India is the second largest arms importer after Saudi Arabia. So, in that line, I think the Atmanirbhar Bharat package was very important to have self-reliance in defense, because we cannot completely rely on any foreign country in times of any war or any mishappening on our borders. So, we must have adequate defense capabilities. And if we talk about exports, then surely in the foreseeable future, India must first develop capacities so that it can fulfill its own domestic needs in the defense sector. And possibly after that, we can also look for exports. But also, India is also exporting BrahMos missile in partnership with Russia to countries like Vietnam and Thailand. So India is also an exporter in that term.
Good. When we talk in terms of Atmanirbhar Bharat, there are 5 pillars which were enumerated by the Prime Minister.
Yes, sir.
What are those 5 pillars of Atmanirbhar Bharat?
Sir, I'm not able to recall all, but one was infrastructure, other one was health system, and I'm not able to recall others, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Tirthankar.
Thank you, sir.
Nitish,
yes,
one final question before we leave you.
Yes, sir.
Nitish, recall one incident from your life.
Yes, sir.
Where you were on the wrong side of justice and you want to change that. And tell us about it.
Yes, sir. So during my role as the additional secretary of a college, there was one proposal to build ramps for the physically disabled students in our college canteen. So at that point of time, we were lacking with the funds. So I made a decision that we would not invest in building ramps for the PWD students. And I think in hindsight, I should have given the funds for the development of ramps for the PWD students. And this was one instance where I think I was wrong.
Do you regret it today?
Sir, I don't regret it because in the subsequent years, the ramp was built by the next students union, in which I was also a part, but I did not play a major part in the building of the ramp.
Okay, Nitish, it was lovely interacting with you. You can wait. We will reconnect with you for your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, Nitish, first, the good things about your interview. Your appearance was very decent. Your body language was good. Your eye contact was fine. Your communication skills are also good. Overall, you appeared very decent. But we are here to do a critical analysis, dear, so that you can improve on that big day. One major problem which I noticed is that you do not listen to the question properly. On many occasions, honorable members had to repeat their question or interject while you were answering. Do not pick keywords in the question and start answering. Clear, dear? Listen to the question. Like, say, for example, I asked you about what values got compromised. You started narrating the incident. Do you understand that? So it has to be.
Yes,
and
sir.
when one question was raised to you, name 4 values. You have to
Yes, sir.
directly talk about those values. Imagine, Nitish, that you are a superintendent of police and the IG is on the call and your district is hit by a terrorist attack and he wants a response in one line or maybe in one word at that moment, because time is the biggest factor at that point.
Yes.
And if you just keep on giving him a long set of reply, maybe he'll get irritated. Do you understand that, dear? So
Yes.
make the life of the evaluators or the person who is interviewing you very easy. Your smile was very good. It was infectious at times, that it is something which saved you, but do not overdo that. So improve your listening capacity, first thing. Second, you were answering without taking a pause. In many questions, I know that you prepared them very well, like the questions related to Indian mythology, because you have incorporated it as part of your DAF. So
Yes.
what you did was that when Nitish, you take a pause, maybe a pause of say 2 or 3 seconds, it gives the impression as if you're thinking. Otherwise, it seems that you have a manufactured answer and you're there to present it on the table. Do you understand that? You look like
Yes,
a
sir.
factory product then. Do you get that, dear? So
Yes, sir.
take your time to think, or at least give the impression as if you're thinking. What is the advantage of that is when you take that good pause of 2 seconds, 3 seconds, maybe the person who is asking the question will elaborate the question further. And you will get a better insight into the question, which will help you in answering the question. So first major problem is improve the listening capacity, dear. Second major problem is do not jump into the answer even if you are well prepared with it. Take that good pause, which is necessary. Third is the answers were too long. It is not necessary to make the answers so long. Keep the answers very short. When you make an answer very long, you give more fodder for questions.
Okay, sir.
Do you understand that? It's only
Yes,
the
sir.
first question which the panelists ask you, and then all the questions are then from your answer. So keep your answers such that there is no counter questions based on those answers.
Okay, sir.
Do you get my point, dear?
Yes, sir.
Do you
I'm
get
getting.
Yes.
Yes.
And some important things which are unpardonable is you cannot falter on your DAF related things. Like say, suppose when sir asked you that does India also have a Iron Dome sort of thing, you could have said very easily, sir, I do not know, and the board will not mind it. But if I ask you how Karol Bagh got its name and you do not answer that, the board will take cognizance of that. Do you understand
Yes.
that?
Yes, sir.
Because it's an information which is provided by you.
Yes, sir.
Do you get that? And you
Yes, sir,
have
I'm getting.
you have lived there throughout your life and you're still living there. And you
Yes, sir.
must know that how the place got its name. Again, one question which I asked you, that name one weakness that you have. And what was your answer? Sir,
Yes,
I like taking risks, or I take too much of risks. That's not a weakness. In fact, you portrayed your weakness, or you tried to clothe it into a form of a strength.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Greater the risk, greater is the reward. isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So do not portray your personality as if there is no flaw in it. Make it real. Dear, the people like Parashar sir, who is sitting here, their experience is more than your age.
Yes, sir.
Do you understand that, dear? So it will
Yes,
just
sir.
take them a second to catch your bluff, even if you are
Yes.
not willing to do that. Do you get that, dear? So be
Yes,
more
sir.
practical in your answers and tell, suppose I have a weakness, sir, and make a very simple kind of weakness that I do not walk after eating. That's a weakness. There is scope of improvement in that. Do you understand that? Do not say
Yes.
that I do not get up early. Then you're
Yes.
not fit for IPS. Do you
Yes, sir.
understand that? So
Yes,
do
sir.
not give such kind of excuses, but such kind of weaknesses which are, yes, maybe the board will have a small giggle over it.
Okay.
Do you get that? That would
Yes.
be fine. One thing is with respect to your appearance. Are you shaved properly? Have you shaved properly for this interview?
No, sir.
You haven't. You haven't.
Barber shops
So-
are closed, sir.
You should do that, dear. Because you see, even the Republic Day parade, actual parade, has a dress rehearsal.
Yes, sir.
Yeah? There is a subconscious memory. You will see this recording, right? Before you go into the interview. So there is a subconscious memory which will be built. So do not take these kind of interviews very lightly, because if you do that, then maybe you have this type of image which would be ingrained in your memory, etched in your mind, which might not be always good. Clear? Otherwise, you
Yes,
are
sir.
dressed properly, you appear very decent. Overall, good performance, Nitish. Clear? That is my feedback. Sir.
Okay. All the points have been very well brought out. Yes, you were well prepared. You have taken the pains to ensure that you put up a good face, dressed properly. You were well prepared with your headphone and mic and things like that. But yes, a few things which actually, let me first talk about the good things. You were well prepared, you were well dressed, your communication skills were good, clarity of expression was there, you seemed confident, your body language was good, you had a smile on your face. Even when you were answering difficult questions, you retained the smile on your face. But yes, as Tirthankar pointed out, do not overdo it. Right? At times, it starts. See, what I'm seeing right now is what your natural self is. But
Yes,
at
sir.
that period of time, I thought I could see that put on smile throughout. So keep the put on smile where required, but do not forget to put up your own face also, what you actually are. So putting on too much of a smile also will become a little bit of a negative factor. Now, hand movements, I thought, even though the fact is that on this platform we can't see too many things as such, but I thought I could see excessive hand movements, which is not right. I would rather request you to keep your hands folded and not use too much of your hands when you're talking, especially in a face-to-face interview. Do not use too many hand movements. You were speaking very fast, right?
Yes, sir.
And because you were speaking too fast, there were too many oohs, ahs, oons, and in between you also use Hindi words also in your speech. When you were trying to link something in between, when you could not think of a word, you were using Hindi words. So if you speak a little slowly, this problem of oohs, ahs, ums, and Hindi words will actually not be there, right? Pointed out about listening. In my case, I asked you a question before I could ask, fully ask you the question. Your answer started, and just when you started answering, my question was following still. So please be sure that you listen to the full list. Wait for a second or two. Be sure that the question is over, and then answer.
Yes, sir.
Right? And answers, as pointed out, answers were very, very long, very long. They could have been reduced. See, what will happen is with short answers, the interest retains. When the answers become long, the interest span reduces. So that can go against you. So keep your answers short, crisp, laconic, and to the point. Do not stray too much, right? That's from my side. I liked the way you answered questions when you were even with difficult questions when you did not have an explanation. You said, "Sir, can I give you an example?" I liked it. Good.
Thank you, sir.
Sagar.
Nitish, good
Yes.
points first. You know things, you have prepared for it, and that was a good part. You are clear with your answers. Many a times panelists try to confuse you or tell you to choose between one. You were very categorically clear about your stand. That is good. And it's good that you also had said sorry many a times when you did not, or you were not aware of your answer. That
Yes,
is
sir.
good. But some suggestions, and you have to incorporate those.
Yes.
Otherwise, it will be difficult in your big day. Okay. First
Yes.
one is you should take few seconds to think. That was the missing part in the whole interview. You were in a hurry of something, even while starting your answer, and even in during the answer, your pace was too fast. Sometimes panelist or the interviewer was not able to understand what you are trying to say because of your pace. Slow down a bit. Okay, slow down a bit.
Yes.
Calm your nerves.
Okay, sir.
Many a times you used this between your words and sentences, and the main reason behind that was you did not take time to think. After a question, if you had taken a pause of 2-3 seconds, then this would not be there. Okay, so take a pause before answering. I thought, or I felt that you are very much pro government. Actually, civil servants need to be pro government. That is a good part. You are very optimistic. That is also a good part. But when you are specifically asked to mention one shortcoming or a flaw or a ground reality, for
Yes.
example, I asked you about free speech on ground.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you categorically mentioned that yes, free speech do exist. That is good. You are too much optimistic. You are too much pro government. That is fine. But
Yes.
I was expecting at least one or two qualifications. That yes, sir, majorly free speech do exist, but there are some flaws or there are some issues which need to work on that. Okay.
Yes, sir.
When then later on I asked you about media, what is the problem with media, then you elaborated that. I was expecting it in first place. Okay, even when one panelist asked you about COVID-19 and government's response, whether we handled it well or not, you categorically said that yes, we handled it very well, everything is good. See, everything is good, but there has to be one chance of improvement, one area of improvement. You
Yes,
should
sir.
have mentioned that. You should have mentioned that,
Yes, sir.
because everything is not rosy.
Yes.
Okay, you should mention at least one or 2 points of improvement. Okay. And on the question of cricket, you were asked about what values were compromised
Yes, sir.
in a particular instance. You were
Yes, sir.
beating around the bush. You were asked with values, but you were beating around the bush. Okay. So
Yes, sir.
you should not do that. You listen to question well. If you do not know, or you are not aware, or you are confused, then you can politely say, "I'm sorry, sir, I'm not aware," or "Let me give some time to think." The panelist will give you time. Okay. But
Yes.
in the hype of the movement, you many a times also presented wrong information, such as you said that in the question of non-alignment movement, NAM, you said that NAM has 77 countries. NAM has 120 countries, not 77.
Sorry, sir.
So calm yourself. You were in too much hurry, and that is why you fumbled at many places. Okay. Baki, overall, your performance was very good.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Sir?
Nitish,
Yes, sir.
so based on this performance, purely on today's performance, and if you incorporate the things that have been highlighted in your feedback, then definitely there will be improvement from here onwards. But purely on today's performance, the board is of the view that if you give an interview of this nature, you'll land up somewhere between 180 to 185. Clear? But if you make these improvements, dear, definitely you will cross 200. And given your age, you're very young, you're very vibrant, and you appear very decent. See, the sole idea of conducting this personality test is to check whether you can be trained or not. That's it. Clear? So on that parameter, you do well. But communication is a major part of administration.
Yes, sir.
And maybe the rush of the blood at your age is causing you to be in a rush, but it is necessary for you to calm your nerves, as rightly pointed out. Clear, dear? If you
Yes,
have
sir.
any specific questions, you can ask them.
So one is that it is my natural habit to speak a bit fast. So how should I control that? So it was not deliberate action, but it is a natural habit.
See, one thing is, Nitish, you cannot change something which you are carrying for, say, 21, 22 years. It's very difficult now to change at this in 1 or 2 months. But at least give a pause before you start and then speak short sentences, because fast and long is difficult to track. But fast and short can be tracked.
Okay.
Do you understand that? So keep your sentences short and give impetus to the keywords in your answers. Some modulation of the voice is necessary. Like, say, for example, I asked you a question with respect to patriarchy, and I said that if given an opportunity, do you want to change your entry? There is always something called introspection in life. You can say that, yes, I would like to change that, but I would not be able to put a monetary value to this because it's love, it's compassion, it's care. But I would definitely like to mention these qualities if given opportunity, and if the form allows it or the software allows it, you can joke around it.
Okay.
Do you understand that? But
Yes, sir.
do not keep yourselves very close.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, and some controversial questions you very easily you escape. That was fine. It was good. But this is what you need to do better. Do you understand that? You
Yes,
have
sir.
to slightly slow down. That's it. Anything else?
So one more thing is that I have given too many examples from my college life, like about my works in the union. So was that positive or negative?
See, it is not necessary that you have to bring out examples from diverse areas. But definitely, if you bring examples out of diverse areas, then it showcases that you have a wider social engagement, which is necessary for a civil servant. Otherwise, it seems that your world was very myopic. It was only within the campus. Bring some examples from your family, from your friends, from your school, from the society at large. That would be nice.
Okay. But it is manageable to have to give example from college.
You can. It has to be contextual. There is no text without context. Okay? So make it contextual, not accidental or habitual.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, Nitish.
Good
All
luck.
the best for your interview. Good luck.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.